Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, episode 84. It's our Game of the Year podcast for 2017. We're going to be talking about our favorite games of the last year. As always, I'm with Jordan.
Cody.
And Dom.
Here I begin the mutiny that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe does not count in this conversation.
I don't think any of it. I'm for that. It's a remaster, a port. Yeah, you're amongst friends. So let's
think himself a regular Poe Dameron over here.
Right. Let's talk about what we've been playing. First off, non-gaming stuff. I watched Iron Man. Holds up as much as I remember it holding up. I'm doing the whole. I'm a couple of weeks behind, but I'm starting up to watch a Marvel movie every week until Infinity War thing. Rewatched Iron Man, as great as I remember it being. Don't want to get too caught up on that. As far as what I've been playing, last week I said it would be AC Origins, Doki Doki Literature Club, and Wolfenstein 2. I got close. So I beat AC Origins.
Last week, Jerrad.
I know. I really like the end of that game and the way they set up the future of Assassin's Creed. And I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't played the game. In some of the best ways of Assassin's Creed, I talked about before how this game didn't really feel Assassin's Creed to me, and I still feel that way. But the ending, I think they nailed it. Of the whole part of Assassin's Creed is taking this weird like sci-fi made-up reality of actual historical events, and they tied it in really nice. Once again, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't played it, but finished that game. Really enjoyed the ending of that game. Now I'm in New Game Plus, just getting all of the synchronization points and all that stuff. I beat Doki Doki Literature Club. Insane. I'll just leave it at that. Insane. Lived up to the hype, which I appreciate, especially with games like that where people talk about it and they're like, just go into it blind, play it, and sometimes your expectations don't really meet where the game actually ends up. But for that game, it met all of my expectations. And Wolfenstein 2, I'm about 4 hours in. I'm assuming I'm towards the end of the New York section, if you've played the game. I'm assuming I'm towards the end of that, the beginning part when you first get to New York, but maybe I'm in the middle or something. But it seems like I'm towards the end of that section. Loving that game. Cast of characters is great. It's exactly what I expected from Wolfenstein 2. I love the first game so much. So, yeah, having a blast with that. Wasn't able to finish it, unfortunately.
Just wait until you get to New Orleans.
Nolans.
Or as they say, Nolans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited for that, and I'm excited to get to Roswell, too. Yeah, it's pretty much it for me. Like I said, I watched Iron Man. I played those games. Nothing else I can think of. Oh, you guys remember that indie game I bought on Switch called The End Is Nigh? That's from the Super Meat Boy creators. I don't know if I remember talking about it. Yeah, been playing through that game too. It's getting a little obtuse as far as like what I'm supposed to do, so I'm kind of falling out of it. But I do enjoy the beginning levels of it. It just, as the game progresses, it becomes more and more obtuse to where I don't really feel the hook or need to continue playing it, if that makes sense. I think for the kind of gimmick they were going for, and I hate to use gimmick because that's like a negative word, but the kind of like gameplay they were going for, I wish they would have either paced it differently or maybe made it shorter, because it's kind of losing me now, but still an interesting game nonetheless. And yeah, it's pretty much it for me as far as, I can't think of anything. I think last week I talked about watching the end of the effing world, so I'm pretty sure that was last week. Yeah, that's pretty much everything for me. What about you guys?
I played more Kingdom Hearts.
Hell yeah.
Did
you beat it?
Beat the Tarzan world.
Very early.
I'm off. So no, I'm still very early on. Talked about that plenty last week. But I also, and here's the surprise one this week, I played Battlefront 2.
I saw that, yeah.
No reaction out of anyone. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. It's whatever, man. Play the games you want to play. Whatever.
Yeah, I grabbed it out of Redbox. They sent me a bunch of happy birthday rent a game for a night for free codes. So, shoot, what better game to rent for a night, play the campaign and pretty much be done with. Didn't finish the campaign. Maybe about 2 hours into it. So I had to go grab it again to finish it up. But, I mean, I don't know. It looks really, really good visually. It looks fantastic.
It's a pretty game, man. It's
I played for the cutscenes.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about like multiplayer because I played it through EA Access. Like the multiplayer looks very pretty. There was actually a conversation talking about like what games should try to implement a battle royale mode, and like as much as it pains me as like the whole loot box stuff in that game, but like having a battle royale mode in like a Star Wars universe would be awesome. It'd be super cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Otherwise, so far the gameplay is kind of, I don't know, generic shooter, I guess. The space stuff is pretty cool when you're flying around in a TIE fighter, though it gets a bit repetitive pretty quickly.
Yeah, when they're like, all right, let's do a mission in a TIE fighter. Okay, finish that mission.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a nearly identical mission in a TIE fighter.
Yeah, that's really what it is. And like, people are arguing on your radio about what you need to do, and then it's like, okay, so you shoot those couple things in space, and then new argument, new thing to shoot. I don't know. It's just kind of, It's not bad, It's just not good.
That's my issue with the game's campaign. Is just very middle of the road, very lukewarm. No one's gonna say it's a terrible campaign, but nobody's gonna be like, "Oh, this was awesome, man! What a great Star Wars experience!"
Yeah,
and I do have to finish it still, and I will. I'll see it through since it's so short. So
same.
The thing too is like I don't like flight levels in any game, much less like the TIE fighter thing doesn't do anything for me. Like I strongly despise like flight simulators and stuff. Just
peeling back the layers of the onion that is Jerrad.
Yeah, I don't like flight simulators, which is funny because my best friend, that's like his jam, dude. Like he's waiting for Ace Combat 7. Like he's like, I can't wait to pre-order it. I want that game so damn bad, and I'm like, no.
Is this the same dude that jams Avenged Sevenfold in Kingdom Hearts?
No. Different friend.
Man.
Different friend. Yeah. I forgot I told you guys about that. Yeah, I just used to jam Avenged Sevenfold and play. He used to play like Tales of whatever the hell, Vesperia.
Oh, Tales. That's what it was. Yeah, I knew it was a JRPG.
Yeah. He probably played Kingdom Hearts 2 while jamming Avenged Sevenfold.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. What have you been playing, Jordan?
I've been playing a boatload of Neo.
A boatload?
A boatload full of it. Played more than 20 hours when it came out early last year. And as you guys probably remember, specifically on PlayStation, there were just so many games. And also specifically from Japan.
Can those first 2 months? Jesus.
Yeah, well, first, even up until like May, even until the summer, I would say, there were just constant.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it was what? Nier Automata, Neo, and Gravity Rush 2 that all came out in the span of like 3 weeks, right? At the beginning of the year?
Yakuza.
Yes.
And Yakuza as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing is,
Jesus.
anytime you try to figure out what it was, there's also
Persona.
a couple that you just don't even think
exactly.
of. Yeah, So, got back to Neo. As you guys know, love Bloodborne, and this is very, very similar to Bloodborne to the point where it's even like when what was it? Bluehole was complaining about Fortnite Battle Royale being possible plagiarism. I was like, well, From Software could totally pull that shit on Team Ninja and Tecmo Koei way quicker because there's stuff in there that is just pulled straight from, like, picking up items is the exact same, but it's a yellow color instead of whatever it was in Bloodborne, blue or purple, something like that. Anyways.
Do you think, it's close, but I think the one thing they didn't even do or didn't even attempt is the connected world, right? Because it's individual like levels you hop into. I think that's one thing that sets it apart.
Yes, but Bloodborne's still kind of split into levels in the way that, like, where the lampposts are, so that you know when it's kind of like starting and beginning, and also obviously where the bosses are. And
yeah,
so
I guess I'm pulling my
between
experience
that-
from like Dark Souls. I didn't play Bloodborne, so maybe it is different.
Right.
So
yeah.
So Jerrad, actually, that's a good. We can have this discussion some other time. But that's to me, like, one of the problems with the later Dark Soul games and Bloodborne is you can basically fast travel as you please to every which place. So it kind of feels more like you're world hopping. Whereas the original Dark Souls pretty much can't fast travel. A little bit later on, but you are relying more on the interconnected world to travel more. So. Yeah.
But then on the opposite end of that, you have to argue, like, well, it does actually make it more appealing for the casual gamer, though, right? Well,
right.
I hate to use that word like that. It's not. I'm not trying to be demeaning, but like the fast travel actually helps people who don't want to have to slug through going all the way through the world. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, Jordan.
Yeah.
You're good. It's just like in between the lampposts, the way levels play out is very similar. I mean, there's shortcuts just like Bloodborne. There's the way, like enemies will jump out of treasure chests or jump on your head from when you walk into a room. areas that you can't see, stuff like that. I mean, there's the list could go on and on and on of stuff that is down to the smallest point, exactly like Bloodborne. So I was surprised, but also it's pleasing in some sense because of how much I like Bloodborne. And then this is kind of, like I said before, I don't love the 2-word game description like Skyrim with guns or whatever, but that's kind of what we have here. Like, this is basically Samurai Bloodborne. So the biggest issue I have with Neo is very similar to what I was talking about with I Am Setsuna not too long ago, where there's just a lot of parts of the game that are overly or needlessly convoluted and complicated. What was the word that you used? Obtuse, Jerrad. Yeah, and there's just a lot of stuff that, in some ways I can appreciate the depth, but then in other ways it just may go 1 or 2 steps too far that I'm like, I don't necessarily need this part. And it's just another stat to keep up with, or another like tutorial that I need to have remembered to be able to properly, execute these tasks or whatever. And a good example of that is like in the menu when you go into the blacksmith, which is where you do a lot of different like character stuff. The way things are labeled is just like soul matching is where you take one piece of equipment and then you add another piece of equipment that will be lost in the process to end up leveling up that first piece of equipment. And I get where they're going with the name Soul Match, but it really just needs to be like equipment upgrades or whatever, stuff like that. So you don't have to remember these 4 or 5 different buttons that you can click on when you walk in there. It's just like, okay, what do I want to do here? Wait, what was that called again? Oh yeah, they call it soul matching in this game, so that's where I'm supposed to go. There's just several things like that that are just unnecessarily convoluted, and that kind of permeates itself throughout the game, unfortunately. But either way, I think people that are big fans of Bloodborne or Dark Souls will be used to a certain level of complicated game mechanics. And so I think that, most of the people that will be playing this game or want to go deep into this game will be able to handle some of that stuff. The biggest thing is it just makes it way too difficult to hop back in if you've gone away for more than, a week or 2 weeks. Because then you have to remember all this crap that is in there that could be, I think, a lot simpler if there were just some small changes made. But it just kind of sucks that that's the case, because there's so many great things about it. And, unfortunately, most of the great things about it have already been said by others and me about Bloodborne. So if you know why I like Bloodborne so much, you know why I like Neo for the most part. So I guess that's its other biggest flaw, is that it's just so much like Bloodborne with a couple things added. There's nothing really different than it about Bloodborne. They just added other things that Bloodborne didn't have. I really like it, though. The combat is great, obviously. Like I said, these are just things that have been said about Bloodborne. It's got the dash button, which, makes me like a game a little bit more, even though if it's a piece of trash. And, I'm obviously very into Japanese culture, and specifically the story that it's telling within ancient Japan, and the ninja and samurai thing, the different families and their houses. And I do like that fact, is that it has an actual story going with real cutscenes, and it isn't all esoteric in that sense like Bloodborne or Dark Souls is. So, love Neo. That's why it's going to be really high on my list when we do Game of the Year here in a second. And I'm very excited to see where they take that series, because those are the type of complaints that I had were things that could certainly be tightened up in a future installment in the franchise. And I think that it was, it didn't set the world on fire, but I do think it was a decent surprise in how well it did. So I could see us getting a sequel. Hopefully we'll get Bloodborne 2 before we get Neo 2, but at this point it's looking like who the fuck knows. If the Shadows Die Twice isn't Bloodborne, then we may be out on our ass. So, not that wouldn't be a cool game in its own right, but it could be preventing us from the glory that might be Bloodborne 2. So, let's see. I played a little bit of Destiny 2. I jumped back in for just a little bit because I need to finish out that story. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the complaints that have been thrown at that, especially towards the end of last year, just don't necessarily affect me because I'm not playing too much multiplayer. Even though I will say I enjoyed the Crucible, the 4-on-4 made it a lot more accessible and just enjoyable in my opinion. So I've got mostly nice things to say about Destiny, even though I do think it's relatively basic and definitely a relatively basic upgrade from the original Destiny. So I wouldn't say... I don't necessarily think that it earns the right to be a sequel. I do think it could have been just more upgrades, especially when they were originally saying that this game, Destiny, was going to be supported for 10 years. So that's whatever, because I'm not a super fan, so I'm not super butthurt on that. But Destiny 2 is a cool game, and I'm enjoying it. So, yeah.
Nice. I guess now we'll be hopping into our Game of the Year discussions. We're not going to be doing the normal thing where we talk about news and then we hop into a topic. I just assumed we were going to be talking for a bit about our own Game of the Year lists, so I don't want the podcast to run too long. Dom, you're going to be going first, letting us know what your top 5 games of the year were last year. You can do it top to bottom, bottom to top, however you want. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I got to actually pull the list up here because I'm have it in a message to you.
I have the list here in front of me. I could tell you, and you could just riff off of that if you want.
Yeah. All right. What's my lowest one?
Your number 5 is Hellblade.
Yeah. Okay. This game is fucking awesome. It's absolutely superb. I think out of everything that came out this year, actually there were a lot of innovative games that came out this year, but I think this game in particular, definitely the most innovative sound design as far as I'm aware of ever in a game, just ever. At least in modern games, I guess. I don't know, but to me, a lot of people would say like the open world in Zelda was so innovative and so new. Like a lot of people would say it wasn't either. Yeah, so
innovative for 5 years ago, that's for sure.
Sure, yeah. So that's at least the more controversial. But I think if you play this game, you wouldn't really be able to argue against how new and creative and game-changing the sound design is in this game. So that's, to me, that's cool that it literally did something so new and different, and it worked. It worked really damn well, at least if you play with headphones on. I'm not sure how your mileage will vary without headphones, I guess. But so yeah, and everything else was still at least up to par. The gameplay. Some people say it got repetitive, but I really liked it. The combat was still super satisfying. It felt good when you landed a hit. And it was a bit more strategic and slower than like most of your third-person action games. So, and the story was pretty cool too. And then Jordan, I'm sorry, but yeah, it dealt with mental health and different things like that in a cool way. So.
You've already had one time you talked about it where you didn't mention it, and I appreciated that, so I'm cool with it. I mean, it deserves to be mentioned. It's just I am upset that so many people can't mention this game without talking about that, or that's really the only compliment they have for the game,
And that does play into what I talked about with the sound design, right? So that's
sure.
As you can probably guess just by that sentence, what kind of stuff it does. But yeah, it's really cool. And this is like a $30, indie game, really. So I think the team is really small that made it, and it's super impressive what they were able to do. So. This definitely
doesn't look like one though.
It looks AAA as all fuck.
Yeah.
Like graphically and gameplay wise, it's like it looks good. It's fucking cool. So yeah, this had to make the list.
Also, shout out to the Game Diaries. Like more teams need to do that stuff. It was super.
The Dev Diaries. Yeah. Take you through the whole process. I love it.
Number 4 on your list, South Park: Fractured But Whole.
Yeah. So this one I also finished up recently. You know what? You might, if you were to accuse me of kind of what have you done for me lately or something like that, of, a lot of games on my list are the ones I played, later in the year. You might have an argument there, but I don't know. I think I'm still being objective because South Park was just, I don't know, it was good, man. I think the combat was a huge improvement over Six Truth. and everything else was, the same, right? This is like playing a season of South Park, like interactive South Park, and it's absolutely superb. With the improved combat, this was just a no-brainer for me. I mean, I love the show, and this game does everything that you like about the show. So, and the ending, I especially liked. I could see where a lot of people hate it, but if you're truly a fan of South Park, then you loved this ending. So yeah. Also, this was going to make the list no matter what.
Not that you said this, Dom, but or said it this way, but a lot of people have said, it's just an interactive season of South Park. Like it does feel very much like the show, or very South Parky, I guess. But I can think of so many properties that I would just love to have, especially TV properties. Like, I would just love to have an interactive season of this property. So,
yeah.
Looking at games like The Legend of Korra, which are pretty fucking butt, I would say that, count your lucky stars, man. Like,
that this exists and is as good as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like, don't just... and that is a big issue that I have with people talking shit on this game, is that they're just like... whether they're lapsed South Park fans or big South Park fans, they're just not that excited about that aspect of it. And yeah, like I said, there's just so many things that I can think of. Like, oh my god, I would kill to have an interactive season of The Legend of Korra that isn't garbage, So
yeah, for me it'd be Futurama.
The one,
like, oh baby,
that could be interesting. I will say though, I have to point out, because I feel like I've heard enough people say, yeah, as long as you like the show, you don't really have to be current on it. You can still play the game and it'd be great. I'll actually dispute that, because I had watched the last 2 seasons of South Park, the 2 newest ones, before playing this game, and there's a lot of jokes that, I mean, a lot of it is satire, of what's going on in the world, but there are a lot of South Park specific things that just wouldn't be as funny if you didn't understand it. Think of the member berries. You might be able to figure out, like, okay, I see what they're doing with these berries, but you know what I mean? It makes more sense having seen the show. Yeah.
And also, I think, I don't know that much about it, but the premise of the game itself, like them dressing up as superheroes, is from a specific episode, isn't it?
Yeah, there's
about
a couple.
The Coon or whatever.
Yeah, there's a few episodes, at least, I think, where they did that. But that in itself... you wouldn't really need the context there, because you can kind of see what they're doing with the Coon and Cartman. Like, okay, he's trying to be like a Batman type thing, right?
If you're familiar with like superhero movies, I think you're good. Yeah, with the satire.
Yeah. But I think it would add a good amount if you watch at least the recent few seasons before playing the games. Just had to say that.
Next up on your list, Wolfenstein 2 coming in at number 3.
Wolfenstein.
Yes. So.
Don't spoil this for
me.
Easily the
coolest. Oh, that's right. Shit.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. I've talked about it a lot before, but it's always what comes up is the characters in this game are just fantastic. They're, hilarious, or like cool, or just badass. Like every like extreme positive, attribute you can think of, there's a character that has it in this game. The main villain is absolutely like terrifying. It gave me kind of like a Far Cry type villain vibe from her. Like, she's super psychotic and just needlessly fucking nuts, in a real scary kind of way. So all the characters are just fantastic, and then what they do, they kind of give you some context and some insight into BJ and his childhood and some stuff there, which was super, super well done. And then the gameplay is absolutely thrilling too. Like, it's what I kind of just complain about Battlefront 2. This is the opposite, where at its core it's like, well, you're running around and shooting things, right? But something about it, the giant robots. There's one level in particular where you get to, I won't even say it because I won't spoil it for you, Jerrad. I just want you to come upon it, and it's kind of like something that I remember Gears of War did, where it just it turns you into an enormous badass, and it's super fun. In a game that's otherwise, not the easiest, but, takes some skill. They reward you in the gameplay at some point, which was cool. So, yeah, everything about it was just, I mean, as far as first-person shooters, this is what everyone else should strive to be.
Great villain,
at least for...
Only 4 hours
exactly.
in, I hate the villain, and you got me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is what, like, other shooters should strive to be, especially, I mean, like, single player narrative experiences should strive to be like this in a lot of ways. So yeah, absolutely fantastic game.
Well, the great thing too, Dumb, is like, so Machine Games came out with a new order and everyone liked it, right? Some people had gripes at the beginning of the game, but people loved it, and they were wondering, like, can Machine Games follow that up with the sequel that delivers on that and more? And so far with my 4 hours, it seems like it has, and with you, it seems like obviously it has.
It's better somehow.
Yeah, and this gets me excited for id's next shot at Doom when we get Doom 2, because that game was so good its first time around. I'm excited to see what happens with the sequel, which hopefully we get a reveal at E3 or something. But I agree with you that, like, this is the gold standard now, in my opinion, as well, when it comes to first-person single-player campaigns. Wolfenstein as a franchise, to me, is like the gold standard. So I'm excited to see it as high as it is on your list. It would have been high on my list too, like I said, if I finished it. But yeah, I'm glad to see it at 3.
Frankly, we don't get this. Think of that. This is actually a really rare game nowadays. There's no multiplayer component.
Yep. Even Doom had multiplayer. So.
Yeah, and you could Doom was the closest to this in that it's pretty much a single player shooter game. You can get some stuff like Prey or other first person single player games, but they're generally bigger in gameplay, I guess, like RPG elements or things like that. But this is kind of a rare type of game that we don't see very often out of AAA studios anymore. So I definitely want to put my weight behind it, half a pound or whatever. So
number 2, you talked about it earlier when you were talking about Hellblade, I believe. Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, this had to get some love from me. So, the best thing about this game, it's been a while since I've talked about it, actually.
Yeah, we need you to represent it, Dom.
The best thing to me about this game was it's super practical. I don't know if that's the best word, but it just it gives you the rules and it gives you some tools, and you just have like some kind of freedom that it's hard to explain, but it really hasn't, at least that I've experienced, hasn't happened in other games. It's it reminds me of Portal in that sense, but with less. I mean, it reminds me of Portal, of course, in the way of the shrines and the puzzles, but also in an unstructured way outside of the shrines, where the tools you have, although limited, like the couple of abilities and items you have, just work with the world exactly how you think they would. That's probably the best way I can put it, is that this game communicates with people better than any other game I think I've played. So if you guys remember when we first talked about Cuphead, and Jordan was like, well, I don't know, I thought I was supposed to go this way first, and because I did that, I missed out on this shop where I bought the wrong coins. I can't remember, but basically the game was communicating, and Jordan didn't get the message that Jerrad got, right? Whereas in Breath of the Wild, I feel like, I mean, I'm only one person, but it seems a lot of people, like, they get the message. Like, they see, like, oh, it's raining and I have a metal shield and I just got hit by lightning. It's like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Or when you get up to some kind of electric puzzle, you're just like, I put my metal sword down and it expanded the current. I don't know, it's tough to explain, but they did a really good job of making that connection with people, I think. The story is, that's all I'm going to say, because that's what it is. So, but the other thing that this game does, that I like better than previous Zelda games, for one, I like the degrading weapons myself. A lot of people hate that, but I like it because it forces you to try new and different types of weapons, right? Whereas in Dark Souls, I always end up, using the same weapon and upgrading it all the way, and I feel like I'm committed to it. Whereas this is like, well, just chuck it, and grab this new one and let's see what this is like, kind of thing. But
Dom,
what I was getting at,
did you ever get into a situation where you had exhausted your weapons and you were in a boss fight and you really kind of either had to quit out and go find more weapons or limp your way to the end of the boss fight?
There was one where I came close. I got down to like the last 2 swords or something, and I was worried. I was like, oh shoot, what am I going to do? But
that'll make you hate weapon degradation pretty fucking quick.
Yeah, and
when you're
maybe
like
I was
stuck in
lucky.
a situation and you're like, well, I've It's not like I just sat here and beat my sword against a rock. I wasn't trying to break it down, but it just happened.
See, there was one for me that one of those shrines where it's a fight, right? And I like after the first try, I was like, I was way too underpowered to hit that guy.
Yeah.
So I could see where you're gonna get stuck in that situation where you actually learn the pattern and how to fight him, and you can survive and dodge all his moves, but you don't have enough weapons to actually get his health bar down. But yeah. I didn't even pursue it. I was like, I'm just gonna leave this one and come back later when I have higher level weapons. So I
was actually overpowered.
Yeah, there's pluses and minuses to it, but I appreciated like this was something different, right? Like it's a change of pace. I still like the the kind of single weapon type systems or lack of degradation in other games, but this was different and cool, and I liked it in this game. But in general, though, the last thing I was going to say is the combat in this game it's hard as shit. It's really hard, which is extremely uncharacteristic of a Zelda game. So that I definitely appreciated, and it makes all the exploration, the cooking, the rewards for the shrines, and finding new weapons. It makes it all like mean something when all of a sudden the combat is actually difficult. Whereas in other Zelda games, all the collectibles, expanding your backpack and upgrading everything was kind of like absolutely meaningless because every enemy was just a walk in the park. So, yeah, there's a lot I could say about this game, but I was into it. So, didn't win for me. Still have a number one to get to, but I did enjoy the shit out of this, and it's a mobile game, so I got to throw that out there.
So, since it's on your list,
Portable.
I'll go ahead and talk about it now. Breath of the Wild is a game for me that absolutely should be in my top 10 and honestly very high up there because I've played it so much and enjoyed the parts that I enjoyed so much. But the game's faults, in my opinion, drag it so far down, literally so far down out of my top 10 list, but also just so far down in the context of the game itself. Because, yeah, obviously we've talked about weapon degradation. I'll get there first. It's basically just comes down to it not being fun for me. It takes away the fun aspect, and I think there's other probably better ways to push players out of getting stuck in a rut with a single weapon or character build, like armor and stuff, than this. It's basically just obnoxious as shit to me, and it's constantly getting in the way. I just gave an example in the first what are they called? Something beast. What are they called?
Divine.
Divine beasts. I was about to say unholy beasts. The first Divine Beast boss battle, where my bows are breaking and I'm being, ferried around the beast and having to shoot these like ice blocks out of the air. And some of them you can hit with your sword, but some of them you can't. They're just going to hurt you. So, yeah, there's just a lot of situations or like when I'm getting clearly some of the best weapons in the game, and within 20 minutes of gameplay, they're gone. And I worked hard to get them, and I enjoyed the way they felt once I started playing with them, but they just got ripped out from under me. And especially when you build a game into more of an RPG than Zelda ever has been before, that goes in complete contrast with the weapon degradation system. There's nothing other than what Dom said, which is that it gets you to use more weapons than you might have originally, which, like I said, I think I can think of better ways to do that. I cannot see any pluses, any positives in favor of that system, just personally from my own perspective. So that tore the game out of my top 10. But then, yeah, there's the other stuff like Dom was mentioning. Like, it's a lot of people, I think this is the rose-tinted Nintendo glasses, but it's just not that innovative. And just because you can climb every wall doesn't make it a better game. In a lot of sense, it's... the climbing is just really slow and monotonous once you've done it for so many hours throughout the game. And the fact that the map itself is built around that, like there's certain places that you're not just going to be able to like run around to the base of a hill and start climbing. Like you have to or start running up. You have to climb from the bottom. And then you're like adding, you're eating stuff to make sure that your stamina gets pushed farther, or you're putting on equipment to push your stamina farther, and it's just like, I don't know why that needed to be the case. The world, as Jerrad and I have bounced back and forth on so many times, is vapid as all hell, in my opinion, especially for an open world. They sacrificed, in my opinion, the size of the world they wanted to make bigger, in favor of actually making a world that was a little bit smaller, but not even chocked full, but just healthily full of interesting things to do that aren't just hunting or cooking, gathering cooking materials. So a better example of that, of course, would be Horizon Zero Dawn, in my opinion. So there's a lot of great things. Oh, and then real quick, I just want to say, I can totally get down if a game doesn't want to be about its story and just wants to go all in on gameplay. I'm cool with that. But for Nintendo to finally bring in voice acting and then do it so half-assed, like I've talked about before, where most of the cutscenes aren't voiced. There's only a select few that are, and from a lot of accounts, there's some really poor voice acting, at least on the English front. I just could not believe that they would, after all these years and all these people begging for them to put some other voice acting than just zap, 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 whatever has been in the Zelda in the past, for them to do it so half-assed like that, I think they really dropped the ball. And that,
I agree on that
for
sure.
As a whole.
That's weird.
Yeah, so that becomes a part of the story. Sorry, Jerrad?
I was just going to say, because I wanted to hop in with the Breath of the Wild stuff real quick too. One of my biggest gripes is that weapon degradation, though I do think is interesting, I understand where you're coming from with that perspective, Dom. I think for me personally, it eliminated any interest in opening a chest in the game. Because, I'm cool, I'm going to get something that's going to be with me for a little bit of time. There was no reason for me to get excited about any new item I got because I knew it was fleeting at the very best. You know what I mean? That kind of made shrines that's part of the reasons I don't even really like shrines either. Because obviously you would get the orbs at the end that you could use to upgrade your health and your stamina and stuff, but there would be those chests at the end, and normally you'd think oh yeah, you're doing this puzzle thing at the end, you're going to be opening a chest, what are you getting? I'm cool, I got an item that I could use a couple of times. It doesn't really matter to me. It was meaningless.
See, that's personally interesting, because I got so much kind of the reverse, where in a lot of games I'm gonna keep going back to Dark Souls, where you go through whatever it is and you find an item and it's oh well, it's already crap, I'm not gonna ever use this, and you end up with an inventory full of crap, and it's well, I already found the one weapon that I'm gonna use the whole time. It's well, see what I'm saying?
But they're still useful, because in a situation like that, you find crap in Dark Souls and maybe you're overpowered for it, maybe it's just doesn't fit your style or whatever, but you can still, in tons of different games like this, you can either break it down for materials or sell it at a shop, and it has a value even though it's not the initial value that you would expect from a weapon.
Also, it depends on your playstyle as well, right? And just, sure. I think too, you could make an argument that the Dark Souls system is wrong, but that doesn't mean because that is wrong, the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild system is correct.
Yeah, that's my ultimate point was kind of, neither is really, in my opinion, for my playstyles or whatever, neither is really better than the other. They're just different. It's just a different way to go about it, and I like both, and I like doing something new, and I guess so.
The reason I dislike the game so much, I think, is because for a game centered around the tools at your disposal, the game is a sandbox for me that's full of tools that I don't want to use because the world isn't interesting. And though the tools are cool and everything, if you're going to base a game solely around the weapons I have at that current moment and the tools at my disposal, but yet you make everything fleeting and it just doesn't seem like anything's with me. When I found out that the Master Sword could break, that completely eliminated any RP for me personally in that game.
Yeah, that breaks my head. I don't get it.
Wait. The Master Sword doesn't break?
Yeah, it does.
Are you sure? I thought it just loses power.
No, it can break.
While. Really?
But that's for all intents and purposes, that's its breaking if it loses power. Why is it even fucking called the Master Sword if it can lose power?
And maybe I'm misconstrued. Maybe it is that it powers less, but I could remember hearing that it broke. I could be wrong about that. Either way, for me, it's when you obtain the Master Sword in a Zelda game, that's for me, that's the like the hero moment, like the OP moment in like an RPG, right, where you're so over leveled that you can just new game plus essentially. And for me, hearing that like powers down and stuff, I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. It's just, I think they had to do that so it fit in relatively with the rest of the way their weapons worked. Of like, well, if we have all these weapons breaking, we can't just have the Master Sword be OP. And to me, I'm like, well, then you kind of lose the whole point of the Legend of Zelda, in my opinion, because like the Master Sword is his you know, his trump card, you know. I don't know. It felt weird to me. Breath of the Wild is a game I feel like Jordan 2, as much time as I put into it, should be a game that's in my top 10 or something. Yeah. And it's just like the gripe, all the gripes I have for it super outweigh the fun I had with it.
And especially when there's such high highs, man. There's parts of that game that I fucking adore.
Yeah, I think for me it's peaks and valleys with Zelda, whereas a lot of the other games on my list, there's little divots, but nothing gets too high. I mean, nothing gets too low, whereas this is like up and then way down, and then, you know what I mean? Peaks and valleys.
Right, yeah. The complaints I had with Neo are pretty severe, in my opinion, and yet they're valleys that are nowhere near as deep as Zelda. Quick question, Dom. I was thinking about how your swords break, your bows break, and which bows breaking, it's like they're not even getting hit by anything. What is the wind breaking them down all of a sudden?
Strings getting worn out, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. And your shields break, correct?
Yeah.
That makes sense because they're actually getting hit, and some of them are wooden. Yeah. That can make sense. And that's another thing. Like, maybe it would be cool if wooden stuff broke, but why are my metal things breaking? You know,
I could see them losing dullness and like losing power. Where you have to go to like a blacksmith to sharpen your weapons again. But like, yeah, if it's not stone or wood, why is it breaking? You know?
But my question is, why doesn't armor break?
Because it's aesthetic and it's supposed to look good. Yeah. I'm joking. I'm joking.
There is inconsistencies.
Sure, but it changes your defensive stats, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a huge Zelda guy. I loved A Link Between Worlds. I loved Wind Waker. And this game is like... I think it's tough for me. Because I think we all come from a realm where we've played a lot of open world games. And for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild... it went too far in the direction of trying to be a Western open world game, and it didn't give me anything I expected from like an actual Zelda game. It's very weird. I don't know. You want to move on to your number one, Jordan? Dom, sorry.
Let's do it. And it's
Jordan.
Zero Dawn.
Jordan was talking so long, I forgot that it was your list. But we always have something to say about Breath of the Wild, good or bad. Your number one is Horizon Zero Dawn, obviously.
So this game, first and foremost, what it did that sets it apart from everything for me, like its absolute best quality, is the gameplay. The combat is like super, super, super satisfying. Not only like, you know, the enemies you're fighting are really cool, but the actual combat itself, like ripping the parts off of them, the different kinds of weapons, which, you know, it's creative, like types of new weapons, like, you know, a rope gun that kind of ties each enemy and plants them into the ground, and you basically tie it down as if you're hunting what I picture like an elephant. Actually, let's not hunt elephants. People are getting. I don't know what I'm talking about, but what I would picture if you were hunting, you know, a T-Rex, like
it's
you tie this thing down, and it's a creative type of way that I don't know, I've never seen in a game before, and other types of weapons that are fun too. But the tear mechanic specifically, just I don't know, it just like. It set off like some kind of chemical in my brain that it was just satisfying every time a giant plate of armor was torn off an enemy. It was like, oh, that's good. I want more of that. Right? It's kind of a weird, visceral satisfaction. And it's simple, I guess, because it's, you know, find the parts of each enemy that are glowing yellow or glowing blue, and, you know, find those canisters full of the gas or the blaze, as it's called, or the freeze stuff, and aim for those, you know, tear their arm off. It's kind of, you get into a rhythm with it, but it's so satisfying. The combat, man, it's hard to explain. But and then having played through the Frozen Wilds DLC last month, was, you know, a couple new enemies, and it reminded me like each new enemy like is introduced at points throughout the game. So, you know, it's not like like a Kingdom Hearts where each, you know, you go to a new world and you pretty much are fighting the same enemies with a different skin for the most part. I mean, there's some exceptions, but I think a lot of games, there's some exceptions to that. That's not a blanket. But you see what I'm saying? In Horizon, like, at certain stages of the game, there's an entirely different enemy type that then becomes more frequent. So in the Frozen Wilds, there's a couple new ones that get added that are like, okay, this is cool. I need to find a whole new strategy, the best way to take these guys down. What piece of their armor do I want to aim for, et cetera, et cetera. So gameplay was absolutely super satisfying in this game. That's what I liked about it the most. And then on top of that, it's a new IP, but not only is it a new IP, but the setting and the story that it put out there just cool as all hell. Like, maybe like for someone who's super into like every different kind of sci-fi and reads every last book and has seen every movie, kind of like, oh yep, this is a classic story about robots and this and that and the need for whatever. It might seem kind of generic from someone like that, but to me, like, the story and the setting was really cool, and I really dug how it all played out and all that. But otherwise, the questing, the world, I mean, it all looks really beautiful, but you could draw some similarities to, like, most action RPGs or like Far Cry or things like that. The crafting and some of that isn't totally, new and innovative. So it does take a lot of elements from other games in that sense. But those couple things, the combat and then the setting, that kind of really put this game, above the rest for me. So that's my quick why Horizon Zero Dawn got snubbed this year at every awards show.
Real quick, I have a question for you. Do you guys remember last year when we were talking about this game before it came out, there was a leak that came out about the story of the game, and I told you I read it because I wasn't planning on playing the game. It was a leak about what the story would be, and I said I would be interested to see.
Call back, Jerrad.
Yeah. I would be interested to see if that was if it was correct, right? So spoilers for Horizon Zero Dawn. Skip ahead a couple of minutes if you don't want to hear it. I'm just gonna ask
spoilers.
Possible spoilers. I'm gonna ask you guys this, and you guys tell me if it. I'm going based off of what I remember from the post. I'm not going verbatim on what was actually written. But I remember most of the synopsis. So apparently, from this post, the big twist at the end of the game is that all the humans in this world are actually robots.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So basically, what the plot said, it was actually an interesting plot. It said that all of the humans in this world were actually also robots who were responsible for the deaths of all of the humans on this world. And they were actually, basically, the plot twist is that the people in this world are also bad. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like
I'm so glad that we didn't hear about that until now, because then you'd be like, all right, where's the robot twist?
Exactly. So yeah, basically what happens is in this story description, Aloy finds out that all of the humans are actually robots, are sentient AI, and they were basically the reason why humans disappeared and why everything like overgrew and everything, because they didn't really need upkeep with buildings and stuff. But then some kind of weird malfunction happened to where they were kind of reset to where they weren't highly intelligent beings again. It's kind of like they restarted, and they also created the dinosaurs and stuff, and it kind of went off from there. But the big twist was essentially that all of the humans in this world were robots, including Aloy. So
that could be cool,
Yeah.
I think the actual story is more practical. It makes more sense. But as you explained it, I guess that makes some sense. But
I liked it because it was like super sci-fi and like world bending and stuff. But people love this story, so I'm assuming the actual end is cool. Jordan, do you want to touch on this, or you want to wait till you hop into your list to talk about it?
I'll wait.
Okay. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good.
Yeah, so that was Dom's list, his top 5 games. Now we're going to be hopping into Jordan's top 5. Jordan, do you have your list? Or do you need me to?
I do.
Okay, cool.
I do.
It's on
you. Real quick, I just want to say there's several games that I wanted to get to, and I feel like might even be on this list if I had gotten to play them more. That's games like Persona 5, even stuff like Mass Effect Andromeda. I didn't give enough of a chance, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, everybody else says, that's not me at all. So
Bubsy Strikes Back.
But yeah, there are games that I feel like I didn't necessarily. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a good
5-star
example
easy
of that.
platinum. Sorry.
But yeah, there's certainly games, and obviously no one can play everything. Even the professional podcasters that spend half their time talking about how they can't play everything, who would probably have more time to play more games if they would shut the fuck up about how they can't play everything because it's part of their job. Anyways, Not that that's a major complaint
Shots.
of mine or anything. Yeah, like, well, we work at this big gaming website, so we're trying really hard to play as much stuff as we possibly can because, that's our jobs. And for one, it's physically impossible to do so. And for two, it would probably be better to have many people with many different perspectives on many different games as opposed to just a small group of people with a similar perspective on a smaller amount of games. Anyways, I'm digressing, so... real quick, I want to run through my honorable mentions. I'll just mention them. I won't talk about them. 2064 Read-Only Memories, Destiny 2, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, Prey, Pyre, Snipper Clips, Zelda Breath of the Wild, What Remains of Edith Finch, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And those are good examples as far as what may have been on my top 10 if I had got to play it more. Several of those games I played and really enjoyed, but just didn't necessarily get back into enough to justify putting it on the list. So, shout out to them games, faux show. And then I'll do the same with my 10 through 6 picks, which is Walking Dead Season 3 at 10, Super Hot at 9, Puyo Puyo Tetris, Middle Earth Shadow of Wardor, Shadow of Wardor.
There you go.
Middle Earth Shadow of War.
You win the podcast.
There we go. 6 is Resident Evil 7, and it is Resident Evil, not Resin Evil, as so many people just blow through that name talking on the internet.
Resi?
No, just people call it Resin Evil, not Resident Evil, just Resin Evil, like resin, like bow resin. And my brother, one time listening to Kinda Funny, was like, so what is Resin Evil? I hear people talk about that game series all the time. I was like, Resin Evil? You fucking idiot. What are you talking about? He's like, no, go back through and check it out. And not just Kinda Funny, but people all over the internet, Podcast Beyond, name it, and they're probably saying this shit where it's just Resident Evil 7. Yeah, that's a great game.
Enunciate, y'all.
Resident Evil. Don't want to be Obama's elf. Look that up if you haven't. Yeah, moving into the top 5. At number 5, we're talking about Uncharted Lost Legacy. Now, you guys know I have no issue pointing fingers and poking holes in the old Uncharted games, or really just the modern Naughty Dog games since the pinnacle of that studio, which is, of course, Jack X Combat Racing. And
makes me smile every time he says it.
This game is, in my opinion, now that I finished it, the not only my favorite Uncharted game, but I think the best Uncharted game. It comes obviously after Uncharted 4, which I thought had the best mechanics, specifically the shooting, which is a big part of this game, and ended up this is tough to make a call on, but I honestly believe that they tweaked it just enough in between Uncharted 4, the shooting specifically, in between Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, that it makes it even that much better and finally gets it to the point where I feel like I'm not constantly shooting guys in the head and like their hitbox is all fucked up, so I'm just getting pwned. But yeah, I think honestly the biggest reason why I think this is my favorite and best Uncharted game is because of the fact that it doesn't overstay its welcome, which so many Uncharted games do. They end up being, 15 plus hour adventures where you're doing one of 3 things for the entire show, and like I said, they just overstay their welcome. So this at more of like a 6-8 hour point is the story obviously really never gets old in an Uncharted game, and this is got it just the way the other games do. They do it really well. But then, you do just enough puzzles to keep them fresh and interesting and enjoyable, most importantly. You do just enough shooting to keep it fresh, interesting, and enjoyable, once again, most importantly. And the same deal with the climbing, which are, of course, Uncharted's 3 main pillars, you could say. So, with that being said, yeah, the story is a highlight for me because this is it's about Chloe and Nadine, but it's really a Chloe story, and we get to learn enough about her to where it doesn't feel overbearing, but it does feel like you get enough to feel like you really know the character in a new way that you weren't even expecting, specifically with the way that character has acted in the past. You you see her as being kind of closed off in some ways because she is, you know, going into really tough and scary situations. She has to kind of put some walls up. So
I assume that you had no problems. You didn't miss Nathan Drake. Nothing against his character, but
no,
the characters in this
and
game are great still.
Yeah, I think that, and they didn't mess up the characters, but the visuals, I think this game looks better than Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4 had some like areas that looked really like pastel and not realistic, which is weird for that series, and this is totally different where it just totally looks, everything's like very close to photorealism and very pretty and crisp. And you know, that could be, I was playing, you know, Uncharted 4 came out before the PS4 Pro, and this was obviously on the PS4 Pro for me, so that could be a difference there. But anyways, another thing is I felt like they kind of messed up some of the way the characters looked. Both Nathan and Sully looked like really pale and almost ghastly, like their skin was like almost see-through in some aspects to me. In Uncharted 4, they just didn't look right compared to what I had them as, like their image in my mind. And I feel like they totally nailed both Nadine and Chloe in this game and their looks. So yeah, this game is really the complete package, and like I said, the biggest point that pushes it over other Uncharted games for me, and even the original Last of Us, is that it just doesn't have time to overstay its welcome. And it's not that it does anything so much damn different than the other games, but they just push on for usually about twice as long, and that makes it a lot less enjoyable for me because there is such a small breadth of things that you're doing in the game. So probably won't talk about the other games for as long, but I think that's a good some good points there on how you know, I'm usually a lot harder on the Uncharted games than that, so I guess now you can understand my perspective on why I'm a lot less salty about this one. Still doesn't compare to Combat Racing, though. So, number 4 is Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which,
Ooh.
You know, in the past year on this podcast, I might have sounded like quite a hypocrite, because I was talking mad shit on the PS4 Pro. Of course, I play all my PlayStation games on there now, or at-home PlayStation games, and I was talking some mad shit about this game. Both two things that I think I said I would never fuck with, and I fuck with them much. This game, you know, of course, when we got the leak, it was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's Rabbid versions of all the Mario characters, and it's a fucking strategy game, and
badass Princess Peach.
Yeah, like the key art, it was all just kind of like gross. And then you get into it, and it's a really deep strategy game. It's got all the Mario charm and not too much of the Rabbid bullshit that we're used to, the obnoxious shit that they're into. Yeah. Jerrad with the comedic timing today, man. And then just now I watched a Eurogamer video about some of the more intricate details of how this game came together, and the fact that it wasn't like Nintendo said, hey, Ubisoft, we really like the Rabbids, why don't you make a game with them and Mario, which is kind of inconceivable when you think about it. So it makes more sense that it was this team that had splintered off while they were doing Ghost Recon Wildlands over at Ubisoft and started messing around with this stuff, and then brought it to Nintendo. That makes a lot more sense, excuse me. So yeah, like I said, deep combat. You know, obviously it doesn't have a fucking story, but that's not paramount for every single game. But then the stuff that it does have, the visuals and the sound effects and the music, and the fact that, like I said, the Rabbids aren't overbearing. There's just not a whole lot that I can count against it. Now, I will say the strategy aspects can be a little bit upsetting because they do go super deep, but that they don't necessarily have everything you need or everything that you would expect from a deeper strategy game. So that would probably be something that they would be able to fix in a sequel, where sometimes you just can't see, you know, based on where the camera is or whatever, you just can't see where you're trying to place your character. Or there should be, you know, more info boxes popping up in a certain situation so that you can better plan out your choices, but they're just not there. So for them to not completely go 100% all the way with the deeper strategy aspects, is probably my biggest complaint of the game, but overall a very enjoyable experience, and that's why it's at so high on my list at number 4.
I want to get to that too now. Your list so far is like the shit I didn't get to.
The stuff Dom didn't play, presented by Jordan.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, Dom, I probably owe you an apology because I think like the last 4 or 5 shows I've told you to fuck off or given you a big old fuck you, and it's kind of looking like that's the title of this list. So I don't know that I can apologize when
the
I
Dom
basically
envy
just
list.
Yeah, just like giving Dom the middle finger is the name of my list. So. Number 3 is a game that I talked about earlier on the show, which is Neo, and so I don't need to like re-explain that, but
DJ Khaled, another one. Like, I want to get to this too.
So
You
actually,
smart.
yeah, that's probably where we should go with this this conversation. You haven't played this at all, correct, Dom?
Not a touch.
Okay, not a touch, and so you wouldn't say that Bloodborne is at the top of your list for like the Soulsborne games, would you?
No.
Because
Like
you're a big
second,
From
probably.
Software, big Souls guy, but Bloodborne is not your favorite, which it is for mine, of the, trying out Demon and Dark Souls and not really digging their vibe for the same reasons you probably would expect, is that they're not fast enough and they don't have a dash button. And so I don't know how you're going to feel. That's going to be kind of a toss-up for me, how you're going to feel about Neo. But you love Bloodborne either way, right? I mean, you finished Old Hunters and all
I think
that,
it's
so.
like second on the list. Only the original Dark Souls to me is better. So I appreciate
Okay.
the speed of it. So I think I'll like Neo.
Yeah, that's where you're at. You got the speed of Bloodborne, and you have the combat feel of Bloodborne, where there's all different types of weapons. Unfortunately, that's where the overcomplication comes in, because in Bloodborne there were different permutations of each weapons, but you didn't have so many. Each weapon was very
Right.
complicated, but there were fewer weapons, which some people complain about it not having as many weapons as Dark Souls, but I actually think it's better because the weapons themselves are so deep. But you have that with Neo, except for the fact that you have probably as many weapons as Dark Souls. You have like 6, now that they've added with updates and DLC, even more weapon types. There's like 6 or 8 weapon types, and they're all totally different. And then, of course, I don't know if you know this, Dom, but you have 3 different stances that you can, be in at any point in time for combat. You have a high, low, and medium stance, which do very different things. And
heard about this.
treat your stamina. Like, that's what I'm saying. This game is fucking deep, and in some ways, it's like, yes, I love that depth, but then other parts of the depth, I'm like, yeah, you didn't need to go quite that far, and it gets pretty fucking convoluted. But obviously, I think you're sharp enough to figure it out. So we'll see how you do with it. But yeah, that combat is really where it's at the end of the day. The story and cutscenes are cool, the environments and all that are cool, but it gets that Bloodborne combat right, and I love that speed, and if it's gonna be punishing, cool, but I need to be able to get myself out of those situations, and it allows for that. So
dash button.
Neo is fucking dope. Exactly, give me that dash button. More games need a dash button, that's for sure. Alright, so number 2 is a game that I guess Jerrad and I really loved, and I know a lot of people did. That's Super Mario Odyssey. This game's just a fucking blast, is a great way to put it. I think that I get where like hardcore Mario fans are coming from, that it doesn't necessarily do too much differently, and that the Cappy throwing him around and possessing people, yes, you are possessing them, Nintendo, get the fuck over it. It isn't necessarily something that like revolutionizes the game or anything like that, but I just think it switches up the formula enough to be fresh and fun. And then on top of that, you have these amazing worlds to explore with so much, they're not gigantic, but they're so chocked full of these like little mini puzzles to do where you're trying to find these moons. Excuse me, I do think that there is an overabundance of moons. But at the same time, it's nice because you never feel like pressured to get all the moons. So if
you're
you wanna
Jerrad,
be
there's
like,
never too many.
right, if you want to be Jerrad and get 999 or whatever, then you can, and there's so much fun things to do for you. And if
I
you're
don't
more
have a
like me,
problem,
where
guys.
you want to get,
I don't have a problem.
if you're more like me, where you want to get hundreds and hundreds and get extra more than you actually need to complete a level, but not necessarily every single one, then you're good to go as well. And then you've got the visuals look great for the most part. the Nintendo made some interesting concessions on how to get it to run in both docked and portable mode, but that's what has to be done, and I can respect their decisions on that. And then the music, man. I mean, obviously Nintendo knows what's up with music, but you know, One Up Girl is obviously a great example, the one that was with the trailer and Pauline singing that. But yeah, I think another thing about Mario Odyssey is just how much of a complete package it really is. It doesn't feel like there's a chunk missing or anything like that. I love the game, had a blast with it, have played it for hours and hours and hours, and anticipate doing that even more throughout this year, just kind of picking away at the moons as I go. And then the biggest thing that I have with Super Mario in my head right now is, I know we get the Luigi update with the balloon games, but are we going to get some substantial expansion packs? And I think that the Luigi DLC update is more of a push towards yes rather than no when it comes to expansion packs, because it shows that they're willing to support this game. But this game, unlike Mario Rabbids and Breath of the Wild, didn't have a season pass, so it is a little confusing. But I do think we'll get sometime throughout this year, we'll be getting a big meaty expansion to this guy, and it's going to be fucking awesome. So just barely pulling out the win over Mario Odyssey is, of course, Horizon Zero Dawn. We talked about peaks and valleys earlier with Jerrad, and this definitely has some valleys, but they're nowhere near something like, unfortunately, what Zelda was for me. My biggest valley, which I've talked about before, is the fact, and I've better defined it now in my head. I think what it is the fact that the enemies that you're facing, these giant robots that you're facing, are overpowered. And then instead of Aloy just being at like what you would think is a regular power level, which is, you know, pretty well equipped to fight these beasts, she's actually underpowered. And so that creates an imbalance in my mind where they're way overpowered, she's way underpowered, or decently over and underpowered. And so that pushes it just a little bit too far, especially, like I said, when you're trying to run away from these guys or get out from under them when they're doing their fucking, you know, football field jumps and complete football field jumps, and they're swinging their tails or their wings or their claws this way and that, and you're jumping and diving using the roll button to get out from under them, and you just can't seem to do it. It's like, all right, guys, I don't know what the fuck you want me to do here, because this bitch doesn't have a hoverboard, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do to get out from under this guy. So, pardon my French, but anyways, I love this game. Love the atmosphere. Like I've said before, I feel like this game could be called Horizon Breath of the Wild, and Zelda could be called The Legend of Zelda Zero Dawn, since they're like going back to basics on that one. The way that this game's nature really feels alive is something special for me, and that I don't feel like I've gotten from really any other game. And then even though you do have the imbalance of power within the combat, it's still a lot of fun, and there is still a lot of diversity there with what Dom was talking about, where you can be tying guys down or you can be knocking parts off. You've got your bow for like hunting and more precise killing, and then you've got stuff like the slingshot with bombs, and yeah, of course, like tying guys up and putting out zip lines for them to run into. The story, I think, is actually, I'm not as fond of as Dom was. I feel like, so true spoilers for Horizon Zero Dawn. Basically what ends up happening is the humans put together this Project Zero Dawn, which is where they were basically making these war machines, which is what the robot animals and dinosaurs were, and they caught a virus that infected the minds of all the different robots and turned them against the humans, and they figured out that, yeah, we're basically not going to be able to stop this shit. It's spreading way too fucking fast for us to fuck with it, so we just got to do what we can to kind of prepare for that. And so it turns out that Elizabeth Sobek, or Elizabeth, I think is her name, Sobek, which is the genetic, well, Aloy is a genetic clone of hers. basically set it up for all this, for life to be able to spring anew once like the apocalypse happened, basically. And so that's why Aloy can access all these underground vaults and has access to the what's it called, your earpiece, Dom? It's like the little piece of hardware.
Jarvis.
The Focus, yes. The Jarvis, yeah. Tony Stark's butler. That's why you're able to activate the Focus and use the operating system. And a lot of people that enjoy, I've actually heard the story be pretty divisive. People either love it or just aren't really into it that much at all. I'm actually kind of in the middle. I think it was a solid story, but I definitely didn't blow me away. Where I just think that the people that really enjoyed it were kind of surprised toward the end of how she was connected to Elizabeth and being her clone, and that's why she can access all these things. And I just feel like they, to me, were very obvious about the hints from that part, even from the start. And so I thought, clearly that's the direction the game's going in, and all the stuff that happened in between didn't necessarily sway me from that, so I wasn't really surprised towards the end. And the way that everything went down with the apocalypse and the end of the world was kind of the same deal. It didn't really throw me off at any point. So I still really like the world, still really think it's cool. I don't think you see this every day where it's like post-apocalypse. And so I think these tribes and stuff that have been built up since the end of the world are really cool and interesting. And can't fucking wait to see more from this game. Obviously, we got the Frozen Wilds DLC, but I'm really interested to see what Guerrilla does with a sequel to this game, because in my opinion, it is a masterpiece. So shout out to Horizon Breath of the Wild.
I guess it's time for my list. So I'm not gonna have Horizon Zero Dawn on my list. Spoiler, I don't own a PS4. Spoiler alert.
He thinks we're all fucking robots, Dom.
I guess I'll go through my honorable mentions real quick. Some of these games, I'll start off with the games that I haven't finished yet, but I think, like Jordan said, might have been in my top 5 if I have gone around to finishing them. Hollow Knight, which I said I'm waiting for a Switch. SteamWorld Dig 2, which I haven't finished yet, but I really loved. And Wolfenstein 2, which I'm currently playing through, and absolutely having a blast. The other games on my list that aren't necessarily my top 5 that I want to give a shout out to are Outlast 2 and Little Nightmares. Never thought I'd have 3 horror games on my top 10, and those are 2 of them. Loved Little Nightmares, one of my favorite 2D platformers, right behind like Limbo and Inside. It's right there. I loved what they did with it, loved the art style. A Slime Rancher, really fun indie game where you collect these little slimes and you basically farm them to your will. More sadistic and dark than you would think on the outset when you look at the art for this game, of how you basically just breed these things to your whim.
It sounds like that's kind of almost like No Man's Sky without the disappointment in some ways.
Yeah, because it's not. I don't think it's trying to be anything more than what it is. It's a Harvest Moon-y, Stardew Valley-y kind of more farming game that happens to be in a more alien-ish world, right?
Which I was just thinking about how I remember the reveal of No Man's Sky, and ever since the reveal, all the way up until launch and after, I was like, this game is not what people fucking think it is. So, yeah, the fact that there are games that are like, no, we get what this is, and we're going to do it right,
Yep, didn't reach outside of its bounds. The last one that barely didn't crack my top 5 was Assassin's Creed Origins. I talked about previously how much I loved this game and the ending. I didn't love it for being the most Assassin's Creed game I've ever played. For me, Assassin's Creed 2 still holds that place in my heart. But I do love this game for what it is. It was an open world game that I wanted to get lost into, kind of like what I wanted to do with Breath of the Wild, but it didn't end up happening. And for me, Assassin's Creed Origins just nailed it over and over again. There's some dips and stuff in the story, but I do like a lot of the characters they introduced. Aya and Bayek are fantastic. They're 2 of my favorite assassins in all of the Assassin's Creed series, out of all the games I've played. And yeah, I love the way they tie in history in Assassin's Creed games. I think that's one of the most interesting parts about Assassin's Creed that makes it so unique and in and of itself. As far as my top 5, number 5, Injustice 2. Never thought I'd have a fighting game in my top 5. This coming year, I might have Dragon Ball Fighters if it lives up to expectations. But Injustice 2, man, what a fantastic story for a fighting game, and for a game that even if it wasn't a fighting game would be a fantastic story. I'm not a DC guy. I'm more of a, if I had to choose, which this stuff's dumb, but like if you were had a knife to my neck and you said choose one, I would choose Marvel. I lean more that way but I do like DC characters, and the story in Injustice 2 is great. I love the choice at the end that you have to make between Superman and Batman. I love a lot of the fights. I love where they give you options of who you want to use. Unlike a lot of fighting games to me, I've tried Street Fighter 2. I've tried plenty of classic fighting games. This one made me feel as if I was progressing as a better player. Which I absolutely love, because in a lot of fighting games I've always felt as if I'm not good enough, and I'm not. I'm not great at fighting games. I'm skillful at video games. Fighting games just never clicked for me. But this game makes it click because I love using superheroes, and it made me want to learn how to do moves because they were so cool and interesting. The multiverse adds legs to a game that, for a fighting game where I'm not an expert at, or I'm not very good, I'm not trying to climb the ladders, having the multiverse and the story mode really helped me justify my purchase price. I didn't have any complaints. I'm not going to be going online and playing people. It's too embarrassing. But Injustice 2 at number 5. Really love that game a lot. Number 4, Resident Evil 7. This is a game that I had a lot of fun with. I'm not a Resident.
You fucking said resin, Jerrad. My
Speaking
God,
too fast.
did we not just talk about this?
Resident Evil 7.
Man.
I'm not a Resident Evil guy. I've actually tried playing the HD remake of the first one, and I don't think it's a very good game. I don't think it holds up. Sorry, Huber. I just don't. I think the fixed camera stuff is, once again, going back to that word obtuse. I don't think it works well in today's current climate of video games. I don't think it holds up. I think it's a product of its time. But Resident Evil 7, taking it first person, I think Dud did the game and the franchise wonders. It got me interested in it. Let's not forget the kitchen demo reveal. We had this demo, the kitchen demo that people were playing, and we didn't know what it was. And then we got the reveal at E3 that it was Resident Evil 7, which was super cool. I think the Baker family is very interesting. I think Zoe's very interesting. A lot of the DLC has been really cool. Spoilers, the end part where you get introduced to Chris Redfield working for this new company that's under Umbrella, but they're not called Umbrella. It's very, very weird, and I love the way it ties it into the normal universe. If Resident Evil continues to go into first person for the next couple of games, I'm excited to see where it goes. Unlike a lot of people, I think the third of the game is just as good as the first two parts. I love this game so much. Number 3. Sorry, were you going to say something?
I was going to ask real quick. I know I'm the tangent guy on this show, unfortunately,
No problem.
But we've got some video game franchises that are really pushing it as far as numbers. And of course, everybody thought that this was going to be Resident Evil's time to, get away from that and just go with the subtitles, which a lot of franchises have decided to go with. With it being 7, there's, Final Fantasy, that's my biggest thing, is Final Fantasy's pushing towards 20. Yeah. Are we going to get there where it's like, okay, we just can't keep numbering these motherfuckers because it's going to be goofy as hell when it's like Final Fantasy 2022,
Well, I think the good thing with Resident Evil is that the spin-offs aren't under the same umbrella, right? It's like Resident Evil Revelations or Resident Evil Code Veronica. Whereas with Final Fantasy, if it's an MMO, if it's this, if it's that, it's always like numbered, it seems like. And obviously there's exceptions to this. But like a majority of their games are in the number progression, even though they're vastly different in terms of gameplay and stuff. I think because that's so hardcore, I think they'll be fine with numbering it. I could see Resident Evil, now you have me self-conscious about that, pushing the reset button and maybe going back eventually, but not anytime soon. I think they'll hit like 12 and then maybe like, let's spin the tires back on this one. Number 3, though, for me is PUBG. I didn't play this on PC. I played this on Xbox. It came out December 12th. It's seen a lot of updates since that point. I think 5 updates total, so it's almost about 1 a week, which is really good for a game like this, where it constantly needs to be developed on and reiterated and fixed because it has issues. For all of the issues and all of the complaints and everything wrong with the game, by no means would I ever say this is a perfect game. This is the most fun I had with a video game in 2017. Hands down. Period. The moment-to-moment gameplay, not knowing if you're going to live or die, not knowing if your plan that you have is going to work. The problem, I think, with this game on the outside looking in is people see this game as a shooter. I don't see it as that. I think this is a survival game that has guns. And the reason I say that is because... Me and my squad, because I mostly play squad games. I mostly play 4-player squad. I don't really play solos that often, though I do sometimes. I think a lot of this game and being successful at it is knowing how to survive properly and not necessarily being the best at shooting the gun. My group, I'm pretty good at first person, third person shooters. I'm gonna pat my own back on that one. But I have a couple of friends who it's not their forte, right? They're not the best shooters, but we constantly finish in the top 5 teams because we're pretty good at strategizing and figuring out where we move on the map and what we do and what's a good place to hold up, what's a good place to loot, does this place look looted or not. Okay, we're in this car that doesn't have a hood on it, we're kind of susceptible to gunfire, let's drive until we find a car with the hood over the top so that way we're less prone to being shot out of it. Like, we're very smart strategy wise.
I'm not gonna give up, I'm a survivor, keep on surviving.
Yeah, and I really love this game. Like I said, the moment to moment gameplay is top notch. I really hope that this next year is where they refine everything. They make changes to making sure people don't get kicked, which is kind of settled down now. I think the biggest thing is textures loading in and just the world loading in quicker. I think that's the biggest area of concern right now, because when you first drop in, you have to wait a couple of seconds for the houses to actually load in. And it's hard. People think this is an easy thing to do, but you have 100 different people when you're playing solos anyways, loading up the same map at the same time, and it has to load in real time of everything, all the items being picked up, all the items being dropped, cars being driven. There's a lot going on there, right? Especially for a team, people forget Bluehole this is their first game, and now this is their first console game, right? So I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, and I like that they're showing
people are used to Battlefield and
exactly
stuff with the bigger teams who've been doing this, and they have the system set up in place, and this is a whole new.
Yeah, and that's an excuse, right? But like I said before, they're updating it almost every week. So it's like, yeah, they have the excuse of not being accustomed to this, but they're showing progress. And like, no, we're constantly communicating with you. We're fixing it. And that's going to go a long way. There's Fortnite Battle Royale is right on its tails, and people talk about, like, why is it so successful? Well, it helps that it's free, right? And also, yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of issues of people who bought Fortnite for what the base game was that are having issues with them not really supporting that side of the game anymore. People that are into Paragon or other Epic games that are seeing that support of those games is going away because they're focused so much on this. Also, how is Epic making any money on Fortnite? Like, there's a lot of issues there. Whereas with PUBG and PUBG Corp, it's their only game. They're focusing on it entirely. I think it's them being at a $30 price point gives them revenue off the get-go, right, of people purchasing it, so they're not as prone to having to figure out how to put microtransactions in this game and loot boxes and all that stuff. And eventually those things will come, because they always do, but it's not as a backbreaker because they're getting $30 for every purchase, right? Anyways, I'm loving PUBG. Great game. Can't wait to see the new map this year, the desert map and everything, and I can't wait to see on December of this year, December 12th, I can't wait to see the drastic improvement from what the game was when it first came out. Number 2 on my list, Cuphead. This was neck and neck with Super Mario Odyssey, which, spoilers, is my number 1 game. This was neck and neck. I had a hard time deciding which one of these games was going to be my number 1. But as I sat there, I kept thinking about what exactly I loved about each game, and I could not stop thinking about Super Mario Odyssey more than I could not stop thinking about Cuphead. Cuphead, I don't want to get into too much because it's kind of all been said before. The art style is amazing. The gameplay is great. We have our differences in terms of if you think it leads you in the right direction or not, Jordan. I think that's up to each individual gamer. But what I can say is a definitive part about this game that I think is that you get better as you play this game. And I think that that's great because you start off this game and you feel like it's hammering home that it's just going to defeat you and beat you into the ground. But as you get through the game, you start noticing that you've just naturally gotten better at the game. And it's one of those things that when you go back to the earlier levels, you're like, I was having trouble with this. You know what I mean? And it's way easier. I think the natural progression of you getting better at the game because they raise the difficulty is great. One of my biggest areas of argument for people is one of the biggest gripes people have with this game is that towards the end when you fight King Dice, they say that boss fight doesn't make sense and it's hard and difficult and it just slows the pace down of the game. And for me personally, I think that they just didn't understand what the game was doing. It's not that hard of a concept to understand, and I think maybe people got lost in it. For some people, they think that the dice roll is random. Like when you pop up and you hit it with Cuphead, it's random. It's not. It's simply a timing puzzle. You simply time it. You know, you cadence it 1, 2, 3, jump, and you can hit the number, specifically the number you want. I had no issues with it whatsoever for me. And I think there's a big enough gap there, room for error, that you don't have to be super precise like pixel perfect. I think the boss fight at the end is very good. I think the hidden objectives that you can do in the game are really great. So the running gun levels, if you get through those without killing a single enemy, you unlock, it's a pacifist run. You unlock black and white mode for the game, so you can play through the entire game in black and white. And there's also another way to change it into like more of a CRT mode. And there's a lot of like little hidden things in the game. There's like a well that shows you how many times you died. There's individual levels that you can miss entirely that teach you how to get better at parrying, which is a huge part of the game.
Tell me about this CRT mode I hadn't heard of.
Yeah, it's like it basically changes it to look like you're playing on a CRT, and somebody actually went and took Cuphead, unlocked that mode, and then went and played on an actual CRT, and it looked like phenomenal. Yeah, I'm not too familiar
so like
with it,
colors bleeding out a little bit or something?
Exactly, yeah. A funny thing too, a funny side story, a little tangent if I may. People were...
We don't allow those here, Jerrad.
People were kind of mad because a lot of the colors vary on Cuphead with his gloves and his shoes and his body throughout the game in different scenes and stuff. And people are like, why is that inconsistent? I don't understand. This isn't right. And Studio MDHR, the Moldenhauers, posted pictures of when Steamboat Willie and the original Mickey Mouse was made. There was inconsistencies in the color of him too. So it was actually to the T of what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it authentic. And they posted pictures of showing like, no, this is what the old school animators used to do with Mickey Mouse as well, where there would be slight variations in the colors and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I love this. It's a great first game for Studio MDHR. I don't know if they'll tackle this type of game again, specifically the way they made this game. It seemed like it was a pain. A lot of labor went into this, but it was very successful. Microsoft has their back, and I'm glad to see a studio come out with their first game like this and do tremendously well, because they tried something that was difficult and people said couldn't be done and was not worth it, and it was a success, and it's a great game. Number 1, Super Mario. Super Mario Odyssey. Jordan already talked on this quite a bit, so I don't want to go too long, but I love this game. For me, it's my favorite 3D platforming Mario. I love Super Mario 64. I don't think it holds up as much as I like to think it does. And this game did everything I wanted for a modern day version of Super Mario 64. The levels, I think, were big enough to let you explore, but not too big to make you get bored or feel as if there's nothing there, kind of like a lot of my gripes, obviously, with Breath of the Wild. I just think they were perfect little chunks. I do agree with you, Jordan. For other people, there can be an argument made that there are way too many moons. But in the same sense, like you said, I think that's to alleviate the stress of having... It's weird. For some people, it can create more stress of having to collect all the moons. But for some people, it's like, oh, these moons... they don't want you to stress about having to get moons, right? They kind of want you to get them at your own whim, so you're naturally progressing through the game. And I think that's
didn't feel the pressure.
Exactly. Some notes I want to make real quick. The Darker Side of the Moon was... the Darker Side of the Moon Gauntlet, which is the gauntlet you can do at the end of the game that's optional, was the most satisfying thing to me all year. Finally accomplishing that was great. I don't think it's as difficult as people said as well, and I'm not trying to be like, game journalists aren't good at video games, but I think this one is a little bit overblown. I think it was all about learning, and I think a lot of this learning comes from my experience with Dark Souls and Mega Man and like kind of harder games, quote unquote, where this was all about getting to the next point of the gauntlet, figuring out what you need to do, maybe stumbling on it, and then perfecting that and moving on. So you're kind of building on itself, right? Which I really enjoy. Because you're slowly uncovering what you have to do next and getting better at that, where it just kind of becomes muscle memory. Whereas I think people are trying to rush through it all at once, where I was just kind of taking it in bite-sized steps, trying to figure out what I need to do next in this section. I'll give you some gripes I have with the game. These are kind of comedic, but not really.
Ooh,
so,
hot take.
1, I don't like that there's no rideable Yoshi. Obviously, you have to possess him because it's part of the game mechanics at the end of the game. Riding Yoshi in a Mario game is one of the best feelings in the world. I just love hopping on Yoshi's back with Mario. I'm kind of upset you can't do that.
You're just pissed off you didn't get to punch him in the back of the head, huh?
Exactly. Punch him and then make him spit out his tongue. I do like how they implemented it. Like, being able to control him and having the classic Yoshi jump is great with the Yoshi sound effect. And the individual... Yeah, exactly. The individual puzzles for him too, with his specific mechanics. I'm really upset there was no DK cameo, Donkey Kong cameo in this game. With all of the nods to Donkey Kong in New Donk City, I assumed that there would be some kind of. Obviously, you get old DK, Cranky Kong, technically, in the homage in New Donk City, but I would love to see like an actual DK cameo. Also because like as much as people want to say they think Retro's working on a new IP and stuff, which I think is plausible, I still strongly think that Retro's doing something new with the DK Country series. Like I think they're doing what Odyssey did to Mario and Breath of the Wild did to Zelda. I think Retro's doing that with Donkey Kong Country and trying to make it new and fresh. So I would love to see a DK cameo at some point. But we are getting it in Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle in the DLC, so that's cool. Some DK love. And obviously the port of Tropical Freeze. Next up, you alluded to this too, Jordan. I hope that there's playable Luigi DLC or like Peach DLC where you can play as different characters, because I think the physics in that game are really well done, and I would love to be able to use
Super Luigi Odyssey.
Exactly. I would love to use Luigi, and that's kind of the bummer with that DLC is because I'm like not really interested in the whole balloon chase thing. But being able to see him in the game to some extent means that we are closer to that inevitability, hopefully. Another thing I want to shout out, a lot of people have issues with the story of the game being Princess Peach is getting married to this guy she doesn't want to get married to, and Mario has to save her, and they're just playing on the classic tropes and where's our strong women and all that. And there's an argument for that. I'm not saying there's not. But I think they do a good job of subverting expectations at the end of the game when you save her and you're like, hey, baby, I'm Mario. I saved you, And she's like, yeah, I don't want either of you guys. I'm just going to, like, go and travel. If that's cool, bye.
Also, Pauline's in charge of a fucking city, so pipe down on the weak women shit.
I think it's just, like, having Peach be the victim again and, like, having to be saved. But that's, like, classic Mario. I think people are trying to read too much into it, right? I don't see it as that deep. It's just like it's a simple video game. It's a Nintendo video game. But I do love, like I said, subverting the expectations at the end where you expect her to come up and hug Mario and maybe give him a kiss on the forehead. And she's like, nah. Mario. She's like, nah, I'm good. And like Bowser's upset and like Mario pats him on the back. He's like, yeah, man, I guess we're done. And then she almost leaves him on the moon, which people don't realize. Like she starts taking off in the ship in the Odyssey and like he has to like jump up and get to her. I think that's really funny. Also, shout out to Dry Bones. Never be enough shout outs to Dry Bones. And I do think that they set up the game in a way that they can easily expand on it, though there's no season pass. I think having the individual worlds allows them to add new and creative things. Like, maybe it's not, you can't play through with Luigi through the whole game, but maybe they add some Luigi DLC that is a couple of new levels solely for Luigi to play through and take advantage of some mechanics he could do. I think that'd be really cool. I just love Super Mario Odyssey, everything about it. It was everything I expected and more. And I'm, even though I've collected all the moons, I hate to say this, but I'm currently contemplating just starting a new save and playing over through the game again.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I love this game.
Okay, that's fine, but Dom, we have to give him shit from now on when he's like, yeah, I just haven't had time to get all of these games I've really been wanting to play. It's like, okay, well, you played through 999 extra fucking moons.
Exactly. I don't know if I'm going to restart again, but...
I love this game too, man. It was in my top 10. It didn't crack the top 5 for me. But I mean, like, more than anything, like puzzle and game design in this game is like that's just like league leading. Like where I was talking about Wolfenstein being the gold standard for shooters. This is the gold standard for like puzzle and game design, I think. My only like real problem with it was and it's not really a problem. It's just more of a personal taste. I just wished it was way more difficult, specifically the platforming. I kept on thinking back to like Mario 64 and like I would actually have to like go back and get more stars to be able to proceed and have to go through these difficult ass platforming sections in these levels.
Yeah,
and
but
that's what I wanted more out of it. And it was still good for me at the time because I played it all on an airplane. So it was nice and easy, but I had wanted more challenge out of the platforming myself, I guess.
Yeah, but then there gets the whole argument of like, was Super Mario 64 difficult because they intentionally designed it that way, or is it because it was their first foray into 3D platforming and also that the camera sucks?
The controls, and I was younger.
Playing on a literal claw.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think the other thing with this game is like, I just love the nods to old Mario stuff, like just the Mario universe. Like, I love seeing I love seeing Captain Toad. Like, I'm like, where's that port? I want to play Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, and you have him littered throughout this game.
But you've got Pokemon DX.
God, which surprisingly was one of the top 10 selling. I guess not surprising. It was like number 4 on Wii U games, but like, what new games are coming out, right? I started that sentence with, you know what's surprising? I'm like, no, it's not. Real quick, our group game of the year. The way we do is we kind of get our top 10 list together, and then mathematically I do the point system and figure out what got the most points. So we're going to work down from 3 to 1 real quick, and then we'll be closing out the show. Number 3, Resident Evil 7. It was pretty even on most of our lists.
Did you hear what he said, Dom? I have no idea. If
Resident Evil 7.
Okay. That's clear.
This one is actually surprising because it wasn't super high on any of our lists, but it made it in the middle of most of our lists. So consistency there between all of us of thinking it was worthy of the top 10, and it was a really solid game. Number 2, Horizon Zero Dawn. This probably would have been our number 1 game if I had a chance to play it. Not that it would have been number 1 on my list, but I doubt it wouldn't have been in my top 10. You know what I mean? Just by that account, it would have had the most points and been number 1. This is a game that if I had the ability to play it, I would have easily bought it and played it. It's just circumstance. I don't have a PS4. It checks all of the Jerrad boxes. You know what I mean? Sci-fi adventure, strong female protagonist, dinosaurs, exclamation point.
Redheads.
I'm not a redhead guy, but you know.
I took a shot in the dark. I didn't know.
No. I'm not a redhead guy. I'm not an anti-redhead guy. I'm just like, you know, no stance there. And number 1, Super Mario Odyssey. This was number 2 on Jordan's list, number 1 on mine. It was also on Dom's list, like he said. Phenomenal game, super great. It's funny because do you guys remember what our game of the year last year was for 2016? Dark Souls 3. So we went from Dark Souls 3 to Super Mario Odyssey, like polar opposites, which is really cool.
Similar tones in those games, similar vibes.
Exactly. But I like that because it shows that we don't really have a bias towards any format of game or anything like that. We kind of we love games in general, and we kind of figure out what that is. And
games are cool.
Exactly. That's it for our Game of the Year show. Let's talk about what we're going to be playing next week. Real quick, I was like, as we were talking about stuff, I was browsing my desk, and I realized there was something I forgot to mention. Toys R Us is going out of business or filing for bankruptcy or something. They were having a crazy sale where they were selling the Disney Xfinity figures for $2 a piece, free shipping.
Jesus Christ.
So I picked up a Darth Vader, and I picked up a Venom, because why not? I already had the Hulk and Captain America, and I'm not like super into like collecting amiibo or figurines or stuff like that, but I like to have like at least a thing that pays homage to something I like. And I noticed that I didn't have anything Star Wars on my like little area of stuff I liked. So I was like, I need to get something Star Wars. And I like Kylo Ren, but I was like, I can't pick Kylo Ren over Darth Vader. Like, what kind of choice is that? You know what I mean?
He's a broke-ass Darth Vader.
I like his character a lot, but I do agree with you. Yeah, for most intents and purposes.
He's a poor man's Darth Vader, I guess is the best way to put it.
And then Venom, of course. I don't really need to explain that. Venom's cool. And then also I played Lego Worlds a little bit, which is people say it's Minecraft but with actual Legos. It's completely different than that. I was just free building and doing some stuff in there, having a blast. But as far as what we're going to be playing through Wolfenstein 2 Dom, trying to get to Nolens and then to Roswell and finishing up that game. We're going to be recording before the 26th next week. I'm sitting there, guys, and I'm going to be pulling the trigger, but I don't know for what yet. I'm either getting Dragon Ball FighterZ or Monster Hunter World.
Monster Hunter
And the more I'm
World.
seeing these weekly hunts from the allies, I'm like, oh, man.
Boy.
This game looks great. And it looks like a great
I think
for people who are new to the series, which is big for me, you know.
We've talked about it, but this might persuade you. For me, the reason I'm not doing Dragon Ball is because same reason I didn't hit Injustice 2 when it came out. It's like, I love DC, I love Dragon Ball, but I just don't like fighting games that much, and so I'm going to need to wait until it comes down in price. I love what it looks to be like the game type in Monster Hunter World, you know.
Yeah, it just looks like a good way to jump into that franchise. And it's funny because when Monster Hunter was originally revealed to the West, or at least when I first saw it way back in the day, excuse me, in gaming magazines. I was like, there's a game where you just go around the world collecting these, like, killing these monsters and collecting the pieces of them, and it just sounds like a Jerrad game through and through. But it seemed like a little bit more obtuse. It wasn't really I never really had the console or platform it was on when there was a good version of it, and then like a lot of the 3DS stuff didn't look enough of a game for me to jump in. Initially seeing Monster Hunter as a kid and City of Heroes were like the two biggest things. Were like, those are the things I wanted to play more than anything as a kid. I don't know if you guys remember
that was the old DC MMO.
No, it wasn't DC. It was just you log into this game, you make your superhero with his superpowers, and you play. And then they had the expansion City of Villains. Never got around to playing it because I never had a strong PC or anything like that. But those are like the two things. Like, man, if I could go back in time and play something as a kid, those are the two things I really wanted to play. Which is weird because I don't think City of Heroes was a very good game at all. But it just caught my eye because I'm a superhero lover. That being said, I don't know if there's anything on like the TV and movie front that comes out this week that I can think about. There's a trailer for a movie called Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. Have you guys seen the previews to this movie?
Haven't heard it.
No. It has skinny Jonah Hill with a beard and long hair, and he takes care of this guy who's in a wheelchair who's a recovering alcoholic. It has a lot of cameos from a lot of different people, which looks interesting. Also, another preview I saw for a movie, Dom, do you remember the whole thing that happened with Penn State?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandusky touching kids.
Yeah. Robert De Niro is going to be playing Joe Paterno in the Paterno movie that's coming to HBO this summer.
Oh, God.
Which is
makes
crazy.
Some fucking sense right there.
Yeah, it's a good actor for that. And I'm like,
looks
oh, that
wise.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm probably going to...
That same thing is going on at Michigan State right now, by the way.
Yeah.
God damn.
I'm probably going to either hop into Punisher or something like that. I'm trying to find a new series to get into.
Okay, since you brought it up, I've been watching back into Punisher because I had just seen the first episode for a while. That show is under fucking rated. It is really good, and especially the way it deals with PTSD is on another fucking level. Like, that's stuff that I was not expecting at all, and I'm really happy with the way they've handled it. And then just the modern storyline that it's doing as well is actually more interesting than I expected. So
I don't think John Bernthal gets enough credit as good of an actor as he is, man. That guy is great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it for me. What about you guys?
I'm gonna play Kingdom Hearts because it's pretty darn cool.
Kingdom Hearts is pretty darn
I have a question about Kingdom Hearts real quick. So I play Kingdom Hearts 2. In any of the spin-offs, the 3.828565321s,
it's pretty close, actually.
Yeah. Do they do the ship thing that was in Kingdom Hearts 1? Like, you know, like the weird...
The gummy ship?
Yeah.
So, like in Birth by Sleep, what happens is, it's really fucking cool. Their keyblades turn into not only suits of armor, but also these like hover bikes kind of type deal. Cool. And it's kind of like what you're doing on the gummy ship where you're going through space and like shooting down enemies and stuff. So I would say that they have it around. It kind of like sticks around in the series, but I definitely think the gummy ship has gone down in importance throughout the games as far as year of release.
Good. I like that part of Kingdom Hearts. I didn't think it was necessarily great. Like, it wasn't. I don't think it was necessarily well designed, but it was interesting to me as a kid playing through Kingdom Hearts. I was like, oh, it's super cool.
It was a little clunky, but I could get where they were going with it. I do think like the way that the design of their hover bike and their armor reflects the design of their Keyblade in Birth by Sleep is really cool. So there's, it's not all just dumb. There's some cool stuff to that system.
Yeah, sorry, Dom. Besides Kingdom Hearts, what else are you gonna be playing or watching?
I mean, that's I'll get back to Battlefront probably, but
yeah, are we ready to cheer on the Jaguars? Oh man, I'm just kidding.
Youch.
Yeah. Blake Bortles.
I would cheer for Blake Bortles any day over Tom Brady, 100%. Tom Brady looks like the type of guy who I'm not gonna get into it. Never mind.
That diddles kids like Jerry Sandusky. Is that what you're about to say?
No, not that dark. Jesus, no. I was gonna be like, I think Tom Brady's the type of dude who doesn't tip his waitress. Like, I don't know, he just seems like a jerk, dude. I don't like Tom Brady.
I mean,
really?
Yeah, he's
that's perception.
I got different vibes.
That's perception.
I think you have the right to say that.
All the stories I've heard about him, especially with the whole thing with, I don't know if you've kept up, Dom, with the whole Bill Belichick thing and how there's a big issue there between the three of them. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I have doubts about the reporting and the level of, I don't know, how serious that truly is. I don't think that's actually...
Okay, Dom's thirsty for Tom Brady. We got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I despise the guy. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the Patriots. I think Bill Belichick's a great coach. I just don't like Tom Brady. Jordan, what are you going to be playing?
So definitely more Neo, which will eventually lead into Monster Hunter World. I think those are similar enough games, and probably the same deal with Setsuna and Lost Sphere. And then I want to finish up that Destiny campaign, trying to kind of go back and get to some games that I didn't, like I mentioned earlier in the show, didn't get to give a fair shake to in 2017, with finishing up Lost Legacy and now Destiny and Neo. So probably just stuff like that, because we're not quite, it's more the end of the month and then into February when the game stuff that I'm interested in is coming out. And then The Path just came back, which is a show on Hulu starring Aaron Paul, and it's about him being in this cult and then kind of becoming disillusioned with it and leaving. And Michelle Monaghan plays his wife, who like stays in the cult because her family basically started it, and she's very, intricately involved with it. So pretty interesting series that just started back for season 3. So I'll be hitting up that premiere pretty soon. And then there's something else. Oh yeah, American Crime Story also just came back. It's about the assassination of Gianni Versace this time around. So really enjoyed the first season about People versus O.J. Simpson, and so looking forward to this. FX, man, kills it with them dramas and comedies too.
Are they the same ones who did the People versus O.J.?
Yes, I said that about 4 seconds ago.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I think that happened a couple weeks ago. It's just so fun. It just nail you on that one. I'm sorry, Jerrad, but yeah.
That's fine. Just stake to the heart, kill me. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just kick him while he's down. So yeah,
so
that's about it.
Well, all right.
I could have sworn you were
There,
just saying
sweet
the assassination of Versace. I didn't hear you say the People versus O.J. It's completely my fault.
Yeah, I was like, this is the same show that I really liked season 1 that was about the People versus O.J. Simpson.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's where I missed it, yeah. Cool. Also, shout out to the government shutting down. On side story.
Also, Dom, go fuck yourself, since we're in the negative pool here at this point. Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening to episode 84, our Game of the Year podcast. Next week, we should have a guest on. Going to be seeing what news happens. Apparently, I don't know if you guys saw this, there's a rumor that something with Microsoft is happening next week. Apparently, they're making an announcement related to their digital games and how they're treated, which is very interesting. I don't know if this is tied into the whole...
basically turning all their digital games into cardboard tabletop experiences. So,
well, the loose...
Microsoft Super Lab.
The loose rumors that people are running away with are that you can trade in your digital games, which is insane to me. Some people think it has something to do with the licensing of digital games, like if you can share it with somebody for a certain amount of time, which would be interesting. That's more plausible to me than trading back in your digital games. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but anyways, we'll catch you guys next week, and we'll see you guys next time.